expect that every time I attend an international conference with professionals as participants, I always expect the fact that people would approach me and ask what my age is. And it happened after the panel discussion this morning. And I'd like to answer that question. I'm 26 years old, born on April 29, 1989. And this brings me to a very important concept of youth engagement, which makes me remember of an interesting experience I had when I went to one of the South Asian cities. And I get the chance to talk with one of the education ministers. And we had a very interesting conversation about inclusion and disability. And the first question he raised was, "What's your name?" And then I answered, "Rolando, sir." And then he asked, "How old are you?" And then I answered, 23, sir. And then he asked, "Are you married?" And then I answered, "No, sir." And then he said, "Ah, Rolando, you're just a boy." That experience with the education minister makes me raise a very important question. What is the role of a young person like me in advancing the rights of children with disabilities? Do young people have the capacity to make a change at ensuring that every child with a disability has the right to go to school and learn? Before I go to college, I was very certain that I would never work with children. That's why I took secondary education, because I didn't have the patience for children. I literally disliked children at all. So I took secondary education, major in English, because I thought high school students are independent, it's easy to teach them, it's easy to work with them than children. And in one of my courses in college, our professor had an interesting discussion about, should we put children with disabilities in a special school or a mainstream school? And then with firm belief, I stood up and said, children with disabilities, sir, should be in special schools. They shouldn't be part of the mainstream school because they have different needs and they don't deserve to be part of the mainstream school. And that particular cultural attitude was manifested of the fact that I didn't understand even why children with disabilities are in school. I thought they're useless. I thought they shouldn't be part of the society. And I thought they should only be part and should only be at home. And this negative perception I have with disability was strengthened when a month before I graduated, I declared to my batchmates that I will never ever work with children with disabilities because first of all, I don't have the patience. Graduation came. I graduated magna cum laude with all the honors. And then a week after, 2 weeks after my graduation, I didn't find a job. Magna cum laude, I got all the honors, and my parents were pressuring me already. Rolando, you have to look for a job because we need money to send your sister to school. And then my professor called me up and said, Rolando, there's an organization who wants to hire you as a teacher, but this organization works with children with disabilities. And I said, no, I don't have the skills and I don't have the love for children with disabilities. But at that moment, I thought I needed a job. I was stuck in a situation where I have to take this job, but I don't like it. And I said, I'll take it. So I went to their office, and the moment I entered the gate of that office, all I see were children with Down syndrome. And to tell you, I have to be very blunt about it. At the back of my head, when I look at these children, there's this feeling of disgust and cringe. I don't know how to explain it. Prejudice and negative perception about these children. So I talked with the executive director and she said, Rolando, we'll offer you a job, you'll be a teacher, you have this salary, not that high, it's okay, it's a low salary. It said, I'll take it, I don't have other choice. First day of work, imagine. Secondary high school teacher, standing in front of 4 children with different disabilities. One was blind, one had intellectual disability, one was running around the classroom, and one couldn't talk. English teacher. I didn't know what to do. I was frustrated, I cried, I broke down. And I said, this is not what I wanted. I want to leave. This is not what I like. I was so frustrated. But when I get the chance to listen to the stories of children, the executive director of the organization said, Rolando, you'll go with the children in schools and observe them. And I get the chance to directly see how these children with disabilities struggle. One example, Gabriel has cerebral palsy. He's in a wheelchair. His mother, who's 55 years old, had to carry him 25 steps every day just to go to the second floor, and another 25 steps down just to go to the first floor. I remember another child with cerebral palsy who was forced by his teacher to write, even if he couldn't hold the pencil, because that was a requirement in school. I remember a child with autism who was required by his teacher to write a 500-word essay narrating the life of a Filipino historian. The child failed the examination. These realities and struggles of children with disabilities made me realize and see the inequality and the struggles that these children faced. I paused and said, I couldn't withstand looking at these inequalities, and I said, I have to do something. But you know what? It's hard. You want to do something, but you don't have the skills. I felt so insecure. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have the skills to work with children with disabilities. But I realized that I have to do something. I started reading books. I started hearing more stories about the parents. I started working with the children. And as they say, love can be learned. Passion became so part of me working for these children with disabilities. And it was the first time that we realized that one of the reasons why children with disabilities, especially those with learning disabilities, struggle to go to school was the prevailing negative attitude of the society about these children. So what we did was, you know parades, right? When there's fiesta, people go out and do parades. In 2008, it was the first time in my city, hundreds of children on wheelchairs joined the parades on the streets. And when people saw this, they were just jaw-dropped. You know why? Because they didn't realize that these children exist. They didn't realize that these children are part of the society. We had a dialogue with the Department of Education to ensure that these children with disabilities should be included in the regular classroom. It was massive. The impact was huge. More and more children with disabilities were part of the conversation. But in the middle of all of these overflowing passion for children with disabilities, my mother told me, Rolando, you're earning very low salary. In the Philippines, we have this moral obligation that if you graduate, you have to feed your family. You have to send your sister to school and do something for your family. But I wasn't earning that much. And I said, I'll drop this work. I'm not earning. I'll go to Manila, which is the capital city, go to a corporate world and earn. But you know, if it's your passion to really do something, you'll stick with it. And I continued doing all of these things. And in 2010, I decided to found an organization for persons with disabilities known as the Outstanding Persons with Disabilities Alumni Community, which puts the voices of persons with disabilities at the front line, making sure that they're part of the conversations and they're advocating for their own rights. And a year after, I founded another project which trains teachers in the whole province of Negros Oriental to ensure that they work with children with disabilities effectively in a regular setting. And now I'm standing here in front of you. I didn't realize how this hate to love process took place. And I want to make a generalization of what are the things that I've learned from my experience as a young person. One is, love can be learned. No matter how you hate something, if you remain open-minded, I think you'll love it. It's very applicable to teachers. I know that working with children with disabilities in general is a very daunting task. Admit it. Let's not be hypocrite and say it's okay. It's difficult, you know? But if you remain open-minded about this, I think you will learn how to love this process and become a strong advocate for the rights of children with disabilities. Second thing I'd like to highlight is when you become an advocate, passion is not enough. it should be coupled with skills. Passion plus skills make a very strong advocacy for children with disabilities. And number 3 that I'd like to emphasize is that always emphasize inspiration in everything that I do. Every time people ask me, Rolando, why are you doing this advocacy for children with disabilities? I always respond with an answer of what Cardinal Roger Maloney said, and this was mentioned earlier, that any society is judged on the basis of how it treats its weakest members, the last, the least, the littlest. And one final point I'd like to emphasize in my whole experience is that leverage on the power of young people to make a difference. Young people like me have the capacity, have the power, have the dynamism to advance the right of children with disabilities. What we need are opportunities for us to show our potentials to make a difference. If I get the chance to meet that education minister once again in my life, I would tell him, yes, I'm a boy. I'm 26 years old. But it doesn't mean I don't have the capacity to advance for the rights of children with disabilities. And I think that's one major shift that we need to have about how young people can truly make a difference in this context. Thank you very much.